This is the NWT Marty with the 3-button controls on a brand new custom harness made for CB750 or CB900. So it's a brand new harness, custom made specifically for the NWT and for the CB750 900 motorcycles. I have it set up here on a CB900 battery and rectifier, CDI spark modules, and I even put the retaining bracket here so that you could see how all the factory plugs should still plug into all the factory components. And so old CDIs, new plugs, old rectifier, new plugs. We have the gauge cluster with the original gauge cluster plug, plugs right in. Your tail light plugs right into the factory tail light, and so on. One thing I wanted to point out, and I'm going to have to label these, this goes to the sub harness for your horns. There should be a two-prong plug, plugs into this, and then that goes down to some female spade connectors that go into the horns. And then your front turn signals I have just sitting here plugged in. We have the marker lights, both powers for the marker lights go into one plug here. They're labeled with the orange plus white and blue plus white. Both grounds go into here. And then just one thing to note, the green with electrical tape on it is a positive turn signal. Green with no electrical tape is your negative. I tried to use Honda colors for green, for ground. They always use green for ground, and so I thought that made the most sense. You even have your ring terminal on your ground wire. This goes on one of the bolts that holds the coils on. So this is typically ground to the frame, but for testing I ran it to the battery. Same thing, factory plug goes into the ignition, and then I'm going to try and turn it on so we can go through the functions. Alright, turn the ignition switch on, and marker lights are on, gauge lights are on, parking light, brake light is on. I wired in park mode, so if we go to park mode, the brake light is on. Normally in park mode your gauges are not on, but for this one I had to leave the gauges on the circuit. There wasn't any way to separate them from park. I turn the ignition back on and then press the center button one time, and our right turn signal should start flashing. And it's these. And hit the left one. Now our left turn signals are flashing. The left indicator on the gauge is flashing, and they're self-canceling, so if we just press it one time, it's a temporary flashing so that you can pass or whatever. The brake light, front brake light, it goes to the front switch, so that's going to plug in to the two prongs that come out by the lever, and when we touch those together we can see our brake light works. I have another plug here that goes to the factory brake switch, and if we pull that you can see brakes are working. Now we're going to listen for some clicks. On the right, if we hit the top button, I believe that's labeled as number 3 on the instructions, one time we should hear a click. And that click is this relay back here. I added a relay for engine power, which is really just power to the coils. So we have, this goes to the constant, it gets constant power from the starter solenoid. That's where all constant power comes from. And then it has a shared ground, and then when that button is pressed it sends power to the coils. So you have to click that top button. That's going to power the coils through the relay in order to allow the bike to run. Then, if you can see what I'm doing here, this is your clutch safety. Your clutch safety should be, you pull the clutch in, and that should ground the clutch safety. And then we're going to hear another click when I hold down the bottom button. That's the starter. All right, that click was power going to the starter, engaging the starter solenoid, and sending power to the starter. I have again the factory starter plugged into this for testing with a new plug off the harness that goes directly into the factory starter solenoid. There's some aftermarket starter solenoids too that a lot of people use to replace this, and so this should plug into that too. One thing to note, those aftermarket ones a lot of times are backwards, and so you may have to verify that and turn it around, but they work. But if you have a factory one, it'll plug right in. All right, so we went over turning the bike on with the top button, starting it with the bottom button, right turn, left turn. Now if we go to the left set of switches, then let's see, we have the bottom one, I believe, is the horn. I don't have a horn hooked up. I just tested it with a multimeter, so if we hold down this button, then it's going to send power down that harness, this little plug that I mentioned, and make the horn blow. The top one should be your high beam, low beam switch, and so it takes a little practice, but you have to hit it twice in order to get high beams on. So let me try. Oh, I got it to flash. There it is. All right, so you'll get used to it. You know, I obviously took me a couple of tries, but you can see on the dash the high beam is on, and then now the this is an LED light. It's a little different than the regular lights, but I do have high beams on, and I can hit it again. Yep, and it just changed. It went out, and then the indicator here is out. So I think that's everything I can test right now, since I don't have a horn hooked up, but I did verify that there's power there. I also verified that I have power coming out of the relay when it clicks by turning the bike on. We verified that the starter works. You saw your turn signals left and right. There's some other operations too. There's like an emergency mode 4-way flasher. I showed how we got the park working, and I think that's pretty much everything. So this is ready to ship to our good friend Eggy over there across the pond, and you know, until the next one. Thanks.